Good Thursday evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Western Mass News at 6. I'm Pisano. Let's take a quick look at what's making the latest headlines. The Boston Marathon, scheduled for September, canceled. In fact, the first time it's ever been called off in the race's 124-year history. New data released showing which long-term care facilities in Massachusetts are not in compliance when it comes to COVID-19 infection. And the Basketball Hall of Fame is postponing its enshrinement ceremony for the class of 2020 due to the coronavirus pandemic. We begin tonight following that developing news out of Boston. The 2020 Boston Marathon, already postponed from April to September due to COVID-19, has now been canceled. Western Mass News reporter Leon Purvis joins us live from downtown Springfield with the very latest. Leon.
Chris, before coronavirus hit, this race was set to take place on April 20th, but now it's been canceled for the first time in the history of the 124-year-old race. Now, race organizers say refunds will be offered to the runners and a virtual edition of the race will be organized. Boston Mayor Marty Walsh says the reason behind canceling the marathon: public health.
There's no way to hold this usual race format without bringing large numbers of people into close proximity. And while our goal and our hope was to make progress in containing the virus and recovering our economy, this kind of event would not be responsible or realistic on September 14th or any time this year.
Each year, around 30,000 people run in the race and about 500,000 people gather in the Boston area to watch the event. Coming up tonight on Western Mass News, local reaction to the race being canceled. Live in Springfield, Leon Purvis, Western Mass News.
Leon, thank you for that live report. The Executive Office of Health and Human Services is releasing new data on which long-term care facilities are not in compliance when it comes to COVID-19 infection. State data reveals more than half of Massachusetts' COVID-19 death toll comes from these facilities. And one Longmeadow facility, the Levitt Family Jewish Nursing Home, has had 66 deaths attributed to COVID-19. Western Mass News digging deeper into the state's inspection process and the number of local facilities that were deemed not to pass their baseline audits. Western Mass News reporter Audrey Russo has the details.
She's calling us all the time asking for stuff, and it's hard to we gotta mail it to her, and we can't see her.
Laurel Charlin's mother lives in Heritage Hall West, one of the Western Mass facilities hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. She says her mother has recovered from the illness, but with no visitors allowed inside, Charlin says it's difficult to tell how well the facility is following infection control guidelines.
It's just hard not knowing what's going on, really.
State health officials have begun sharing the results of infection control audits being conducted at long-term care facilities around the state. The nursing homes were graded on a 28-point scale using a list of criteria. Some of those criteria, called core competencies, were so important that even if a nursing home scored a 27 out of 28, if they missed one core competency, they would be considered not in adherence. The core competencies include criteria like separating COVID-positive patients from COVID-negative residents, closing down communal areas, and use of personal protective equipment. In Western Mass, more than 7 facilities failed to meet a core competency. But as the CEO of one of those facilities pointed out, the audit's PPE guidelines were strict in a time when access to supplies was tight.
We have a 42-bed, nursing home. It's our only nursing home, and we don't have a hospital behind us who's a machine out there being able to access equipment and PPE for the hospital and then sharing it with the nursing home.
Margaret Mantoni tells Western Mass News when the auditor came through Loomis Lakeside at Reed's Landing, the facility was following the CDC guidelines for conserving eye protection. But she says when staff was observed not wearing eye protection at all times on the non-COVID unit, they were dinged.
For what we believe to be in compliance, but what the auditor did not believe to be in compliance.
Loomis Lakeside has since been re-audited, and they are in compliance. Through statements sent in response to Western Mass News inquiries, we've also learned that Care One Holyoke, Agawam Healthcare, Heritage Hall South and West have also been audited again and are in compliance. Heritage Hall East is currently undergoing re-education in infection control. But Mantoni says funding is on the line for facilities that didn't meet a core competency in the first baseline exam.
The amount of reimbursement that the additional funding that you receive is reduced.
And she says when PPE is considered a critical part of infection control, it's difficult for some facilities to keep up in a shortage.
In some ways, yes, the smaller nursing homes are probably at a disadvantage and then don't get all the funding.
In Springfield, Audrey Russo, Western Mass News.
The Massachusetts Department of Public Health releasing the latest coronavirus numbers. So far, the number of tests conducted is 562,323, with just over 10,000 tests administered today. The Department of Public Health confirming 94,895 positive cases today. 6,640 people have died from COVID-19, with 93 new deaths reported today. And breaking down those numbers county by county, here in Western Mass, Hampden County reporting 5,878 coronavirus cases. Hampshire County 845, Franklin 319, and Berkshire County 539. So in total, Western Mass is reporting 7,581 COVID-19 cases. The Basketball Hall of Fame postponing its enshrinement ceremony for the class of 2020 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Western Mass News reporter Lindsay Kane live for us in Springfield with more on how the move affects local businesses who normally see an influx of tourists on enshrinement weekend. Lindsay?
Chris, Hall of Fame officials are still discussing when to hold the ceremony. One of those scenarios is spring of 2021, a date too far in the future for some struggling businesses.
I'm not necessarily shocked, but it's not good for the city of Springfield, let alone restaurants around here.
The Basketball Hall of Fame was set to honor the enshrinement class of 2020 in August. In a statement to Western Mass News, the Hall says they are looking at an alternate date in October, but also exploring an option for spring of 2021.
I don't know that there's anything that isn't getting postponed, so it's probably not going to be a shock. We're talking about a huge event where there's going to be a lot of people in close proximity, so that's got to be something we got to worry about. So if we need to move it, then we need to move it.
This year's lineup is expected to be one of the most star-studded lineups ever, including Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, and the late Kobe Bryant, who died in a helicopter crash back in January. John Thomas, general manager and partner of Max's Tavern, tells Western Mass News that enshrinement weekend is normally great for business and great for the city.
We're extremely busy. We've done parties for the different players that have come through. We've had parties for Pat Riley and his family and his wife. Charles Barkley's in the restaurant. So not only do we get a little bit busier, we get kind of a cachet of having celebrities in town. And that's always a nice thing.
And with the doors still closed at Max's Tavern, the future of a reopening date and the next big event to look forward to is still hazy.
They're not really giving us much guidance on where we can be and when we can be there as far as opening up completely. We have everything in place, ready to go. Masks are on hand. We have all the gloves we need. We're ready to go as far as if the governor opens on Monday.
The Hall of Fame will announce their decision the week of June 15th. Live in Springfield, Lindsay Kane, Western Mass News.
Lindsay, thanks for that live report. And for more coverage on the coronavirus emergency as it continues to develop, log on to our free Western Mass News streaming app. Now at 6, Massachusetts State Police reporting an increase in car thefts and break-ins just over the past few months. They say several incidents are connected to the same groups of people. These groups have been seen wandering around the areas in the overnight hours looking for unlocked cars, and the break-ins have been recently reported in East Longmeadow, West Springfield, and Ludlow. Western Mass News spoke to Sergeant Joseph LaFrance with the West Springfield Police Department. He tells us it's important to make sure all car doors are locked before and during your home.
You know, we just keep saying the same thing. Make sure your car doors are locked at night. Take in valuables. Don't leave valuables in your car. Lock them in the trunk. They will break the window of a car to obtain valuables that are in plain view. But 95% of the time, these are crimes of opportunity with doors being left unlocked.
Sergeant LaFrance said every community is going to see an uptick in cycles of car break-ins and that these incidents go and come every year, and to just be mindful of taking all belongings out of your car.